You won't believe what happened when a wealthy millionaire decided to invite the black cleaning lady from his mansion to an exclusive gala, thinking it would be nothing more than a cruel inside joke for him and his high society friends. The very first moment he thought of it, the idea was soaked in arrogance. He imagined she would never actually show up, or if she did, she would arrive looking out of place, nervous and ashamed. But what unfolded that evening shocked not only him, but every guest in the grand ballroom. Before I tell you exactly how this remarkable story played out, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because here on our channel, we share stories that twist your expectations and leave you speechless until the very last second. And trust me, you don't want to miss how this one ends. The cleaning lady was a woman who lived most of her life invisible to the very people who looked down on her, polishing marble floors, scrubbing golden sinks, and folding designer clothes she could never afford. Every day she endured dismissive glances, careless words, and the unshakable reminder that she was seen as less. Yet behind her calm eyes and quiet humility was a strength that had been forged in fire, and a dignity that no one, not even a millionaire who thought he held the power, could strip away. When she received that unexpected invitation sealed in thick gold paper embossed with the millionaire's crest, she paused for a long while. She knew it was not kindness. It was a trap, a mockery, a way to make her the punchline at an event filled with people who had never once looked at her as an equal. But instead of tossing it away, she placed it carefully on her worn wooden table and whispered to herself that perhaps this time the tables would turn. She had a secret no one knew, not even her employer, and the gala would be the perfect place to reveal it. When the night of the gala arrived, the millionaire's mansion was lit like a palace, chandeliers glowing through massive windows, the long driveway lined with luxury cars gleaming under the moonlight. Inside, the air was thick with perfume and laughter, the kind that often masks arrogance. The millionaire strutted through the ballroom, already telling his close friends about the special guest he had invited. They chuckled behind champagne glasses, imagining how awkward the cleaning lady would look, perhaps dressed in something old or unfit for the glittering crowd. "It'll be the highlight of the night," he boasted, certain that his cruel plan would make everyone laugh at her expense. But what he didn't know was that at that very moment, the cleaning lady was stepping out of a sleek black car, one that no one would have ever thought belonged to her. She wasn't alone. Her cousin, a fashion stylist who had worked in the industry for years, had decided to help her prepare for this night. Instead of showing up as the maid, she walked with the grace of a woman who belonged on magazine covers. Her gown was a flowing masterpiece of deep sapphire silk, catching every glimmer of light as though the stars themselves had woven it. Around her neck rested a delicate diamond pendant, heirloom passed down from her grandmother, a woman who had once been a pillar of their community, but whose wealth had been lost to injustice years ago. The lady carried herself with a poise that silenced the whispers the moment she entered. The millionaire's eyes widened, his smirk freezing halfway as his plan began to unravel. She wasn't embarrassed. She wasn't out of place. Instead, she was the very image of confidence. Her every step echoing the truth that dignity and elegance do not belong exclusively to those born into privilege. The guests who had been ready to laugh found themselves instead staring, curious, even impressed. Some whispered, "Who is she?" as if she were royalty they had never heard of. And as she met their gaze, she smiled, not a timid smile, but one of quiet power, as if she knew something they didn't. She walked past the millionaire without faltering, her perfume lingering like a reminder that she was not a shadow in the corner anymore, but a presence no one could ignore. The room shifted the moment she entered, and though the orchestra continued to play softly in the corner, the melody seemed to dim beneath the weight of her presence. The millionaire tried to recover quickly, forcing a laugh as though nothing was out of place, but the tremor in his voice betrayed him. He had imagined this scene so differently, her arriving timid, her eyes cast downward, fumbling with a dress. That didn't fit, giving everyone a story to mock later. But instead, she was stealing the attention that he thought belonged to him. The cleaning lady knew tonight she was something far greater, moved with ease through the crowd, exchanging polite nods, shaking hands with a confidence that stunned even the most seasoned socialites. It turned out that many of the wealthy guests at the gala weren't strangers to her. While the millionaire thought of her only as the invisible woman who scrubbed his marble floors, in her private life she was deeply involved in local charities, education programs, and even small business initiatives that many of the guests had indirectly supported. They were shocked to recognize her outside of her uniform. Shocked that the woman who had always been silent in the background was, in fact, a leader in her own right. One guest even exclaimed softly to another, "Isn't that the woman from the community foundation meeting?" Another whispered, "She looks incredible. I can't believe I never noticed before." With each compliment, the millionaire's pride cracked a little more. Tried to interrupt, to regain control of the night, but every time he moved toward her, another guest intercepted, curious to learn who she really was. She handled their questions with warmth, telling stories about her work, her upbringing, and the strength it took to rise above hardship. Her voice carried not just elegance, but conviction, and people leaned in, listening to every word. The millionaire's friends, who had expected laughter, now looked uneasy. It was as though the entire room had been flipped upside down, and the joke was no longer on her, it was on him. The more she shined, the smaller he appeared, and for the first time in years, his wealth and status couldn't shield him from irrelevance. In that dazzling ballroom, under the golden chandeliers, the cleaning lady he had mocked had transformed into the star of the night. As the night unfolded, something remarkable happened that no one, least of all the millionaire, could have anticipated. The gala was not just a gathering for celebration, it was also a fundraiser, an evening where pledges and donations would be made for a new cultural center in the city. Traditionally, the wealthy guests would take turns announcing their contributions, each trying to outshine the other with grand gestures and inflated figures. The millionaire had been certain he would dominate this portion of the night, using his wealth to command respect and draw admiration. But before he could even step onto the stage, the host of the evening surprised everyone by inviting the cleaning lady forward. She looked momentarily caught off guard, but with quiet composure, she accepted the invitation and walked to the microphone. The crowd hushed, curious to hear what she would say, half expecting her to fumble or decline. Instead, her words rolled out with such grace and eloquence that the silence in the room grew heavy, every ear straining to catch her voice. She spoke not as a maid, but as a woman who had lived the struggles of poverty and still found ways to rise. She shared stories of young children in her community who dreamed big, but lacked resources, of single mothers who worked themselves to the bone just to keep food on the table, of neighbors who supported one another when the world overlooked them. "I stand here," she said firmly, her eyes sweeping across the glittering hall, not as a guest of mockery, but as a reminder that true dignity cannot be bought with gold or hidden under uniforms. We are more than the roles assigned to us. We are dreamers, workers, leaders, and we will not be invisible. A ripple of applause grew louder and louder until the entire hall was on its feet, clapping for her. But the moment that sealed her transformation came next. Instead of stopping with words, she announced her own pledge. It wasn't as large as the millionaire's fortune, but it was powerful in its symbolism. She revealed that she had been saving for years, pooling together small amounts from her modest salary, and had also partnered with a network of community members who trusted her leadership. Together, they had raised enough to pledge a substantial donation toward the cultural center. Gasps echoed across the room, not because the amount rivaled the millionaire's, but because it came from sacrifice, unity, and sheer determination. The millionaire felt his throat tighten as the room erupted again in applause. But this time the applause wasn't polite. It was thunderous, heartfelt, standing ovation for a woman who had turned his cruel invitation into a triumph. He sat, frozen, his glass of champagne trembling slightly in his hand, realizing that in one evening he had gone from orchestrating a joke to becoming the butt of it, and she had risen above him in a way no money could ever undo. The millionaire sat there, shrinking in his own chair, as the gala shifted entirely around him. What was meant to be his stage had become hers, and what was meant to humiliate her had elevated her higher than he could have ever imagined. Guests, who had always looked to him as the man of wealth and grandeur, now turned their admiration toward her, treating her as the heartbeat of the evening. After her speech, people came forward one after another, not just to pledge money, but to thank her, to shake her hand, to tell her how deeply her words had touched them. They no longer saw her as the maid in a uniform. They saw her as a woman, of influence, of strength, of beauty that went far beyond the gown she wore. And the truth was, she had always been that woman. They had simply never bothered to look. The millionaire's plan had backfired so spectacularly that the whispers began circling the room. Some guests muttered, "Imagine thinking she would be embarrassed." He embarrassed himself. Others laughed under their breath, not at her, but at him, the man who thought cruelty was clever. She, however, remained gracious. She didn't gloat, didn't humiliate him in return. Instead, as she prepared to leave, she walked over to him, meeting his eyes with a steady gaze that carried both forgiveness and unshakable dignity. "Thank you for the invitation," she said softly, but with a weight that made the words cut deeper than any insult could. She turned, her gown flowing behind her like a wave of power, and walked out of the mansion into the cool night air. The flash of cameras followed her not because of her status as a cleaning lady, but because she had become the star everyone wanted to capture. And as her car door closed and she disappeared into the night, the millionaire was left in the ballroom, surrounded by laughter that no longer belonged to him. She had shown up not as his joke, but as his undoing, and in doing so, she proved to everyone watching that respect is never granted by wealth but earned through character. And that night the cleaning lady mocked, underestimated, forgotten walked away as the true diva, leaving the millionaire and his hollow pride in the shadows of his own making. If this story left you moved, inspired, or even a little speechless, make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because on this channel, stories like this remind us that the world is full of surprises, and sometimes the underdog becomes the hero in ways that nobody saw coming.